Oui, ở that ring there.
All right, so we now that we are studying the text of the Lam Rim text that consolidates all the important points of the 84,000 bundles of teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni, as well as all the important points that were expounded by Indian masters. The particular text that we are reading right now is composed by the third Dalai Lama, Sonam Gyatso, The Essence of Refined Gold. So in this case, especially because we engage the Lam Rim, but as it is with every other case, every other activity, the motivation is very important. So we need to have a very pure motivation. Our motivation should be along the lines that says, for the sake of all sentient beings who are as vast as the vastness of space, I will obtain the state of Buddhahood. And in order for this to happen, I will listen to this Dharma with pure body, speech, and mind. The strength of the activity, the capacity of the activity, whatever activity it is actually determined through the type of motivation that we have. And with the right pure motivation, where we make sure that our body, our speech, and our mind, all three, engage in a proper way in the Dharma activity, then we can accumulate great waves of merit. Now, many times it is the case that the physical activity is proper. However, the mind is not engaging properly. The mind can be very easily distracted and be wandering off in other areas. So this is something that we need to address. Our life is very short. Our time here is very limited. And it is very important that our study is that will make our mind turn into Dharma and will make the Dharma turn into a path. So always we should make effort to familiarize ourselves and meditate upon the three principal aspects of the path of renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view, and in particular to cultivate the mind of bodhicitta. Right. We know that in the Lam Rim Chenmo, Je Tsongkhapa many times mentions that this Lam Rim Chenmo is a text that includes all the three principal aspects of the path, and it includes the three scopes. Also, we know that it includes the presentation of the three vehicles. The vehicles here are the vehicles of the hearers, the solitary realizers, and the bodhisattvas. So hearers and solitary realizers, they might have very good understanding of selflessness. However, they lack the mind of bodhicitta, and this is why their vehicle is characterized as the Hinayana vehicle, whilst the vehicle of the bodhisattvas, because it has bodhicitta as the main element, is categorized as the Mahayana vehicle. So the important thing, the distinctive feature of the Mahayana is that there is always this motivation that says, I aspire to reach the state of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, as vast as the vastness of space. So there is no focus on myself, just myself, because myself, I'm only just one person. So this would be a very limited approach, rather that there is great emphasis on looking at others. Now, whichever vehicle you follow, whether it is Hinayana or Mahayana, you will have to traverse along the five paths, from the path of accumulation to the path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, path of normal learning. Now, in addition to that, in the Mahayana, we will also establish the 10 grounds. However, we say there's a special emphasis on bodhicitta. When you first generate that mind of bodhicitta, this is when you enter the Mahayana path, you become a Mahayana practitioner, and you enter the Mahayana path of accumulation. But prior to reaching that point, it is very important that you have renunciation, that you have great compassion, that you train in the two methods for generating bodhicitta, the method of the sevenfold cause and effect method, and the method of equalizing and exchanging self for others. So it takes quite a lot of training before you reach the point of the Mahayana path of accumulation. We know that many texts make it very clear that our teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, spent 3 countless great eons to complete this training. So for, let's say, all the preliminary practices took 1 countless great eon, then the 7 impure grounds took another eon, countless great eon, right? And then the 3 pure grounds at the end again took 1 more countless great eon. So definitely we have the potency to reach the state of Buddhahood. Why? Because we are sentient beings, and all sentient beings possess the Buddha nature, and the afflictions that we possess are suitable to be removed. As the texts say, the nature of the mind is clear and knowing, and the stains are accidental, they are adventitious. Therefore, if we make the effort to meditate, we can definitely remove these afflictions, and we can develop our qualities. Especially if we meditate on emptiness, we can come to the point of generating the direct realization of emptiness. Once we have direct realization of emptiness, this can act as the direct antidote to our afflictions, such as attachment and hatred and ignorance and so forth. And from that point onwards, we can definitely see how we can progress to the state of omniscience. So we mentioned that when we first generate the mind of bodhicitta, this is when we enter the Mahayana path on the path of accumulation, right? However, it is possible that that mind of bodhicitta declines even after it has been generated. So in order to maintain it and make sure that there is no decline, but instead there is increase, it is paramount that we engage in the practices of the bodhisattvas. So we have to engage in the practice of generosity, of ethics, of patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, calm abiding, especially inside the union of those things. So it is by engaging in this training that we reinforce our bodhicitta. So, for example, when we first begin with the training of generosity, we're not capable of practicing generosity with our body. However, when we reach, let's say, the first ground, the second ground, and so forth, we're able to practice generosity even with our body. As entering the middle way text says, the bodhisattva at this level is able to practice generosity with the body, even when someone is cutting off the flesh bit by bit by bit. Okay, so the reason why the bodhisattva is capable of doing this is because they are totally working for the benefit of others. This is what they are preoccupied with, and they have completely given up any sense of preoccupation with their own well-being, with their own body. So, do what you like. What I'm working for is the benefit of sentient beings. So it is very important, although we are practicing Lam Rim Chenmo, to be sure that we understand, not to think that, this will not happen to me, but to understand that we need to engage continuously in that training for the sake of all sentient beings. I need to engage all these trainings. Okay, so we talked about obtaining the path of accumulation. The path of accumulation comes in 3 levels: the small, the medium, and the great path of accumulation. It is from the point when we reach the great path of accumulation, from that point onwards, the attitude of wishing to bring about the benefit of others is constantly manifest in the mind. And from that point onwards, there is no danger of the bodhicitta declining. So we continue to train, and as we continue to train, there will be increase in our good qualities. And we will move from the path of accumulation to the next one, which is the path of preparation. So we notice a constant increase of our qualities. Our qualities do not decline. Just as when we progress along the classes in school, so you go through year 1 and you learn a few things, then you go to year 2, year 3, and so forth. So as you progress, you do not lose what you learn or what you trained in the previous classes. So this is what happens also with the bodhisattva that progresses along the path. They don't lose the previous qualities, they add to those qualities. During the path of accumulation and the path of preparation, whatever realization of emptiness occurs, it happens through the means of a generic image. So it is not direct realization. Eventually, though, with continuous practice, they will develop the wisdom derived from meditation. And at this point, they will obtain direct realization of emptiness. When this happens, they move from the path of preparation to the path of seeing. So with direct realization of emptiness now, they can use this as an antidote to abandon various afflictions. Now, When we talk about afflictions and self-grasping, these come into two levels. One is the intellectually acquired, and the other one is the innate. So at the beginning on the path of seeing, when they first obtained this, they use the direct realization of emptiness as an antidote to the intellectually acquired afflictions. Okay, whatever is the case, whether you are training in the Lam Rim, whether you're doing Lojong, whether you're studying the ornament of realization, whatever you call the training that you do or the study that you do, definitely you will need to go through the 5 paths, starting with the path of accumulation, right? All right, so when you come to the path of seeing and you have direct realization of emptiness, as you say, now you're using this as an antidote and you abandoning certain things. When you abandon things, you obtain what is called the cessation of abandonment, and you obtain true cessation. And at this point, you become the Dharma jewel, and also you become the Sangha jewel, because you have become an Arya being. So we are still talking about the 5 paths. We have reached to the path of seeing. The path of seeing is actually described as the 16 moments of the path of seeing. So the 16 moments of the path of seeing here refer to meditation on the emptiness of the 16 features of the 4 noble truths. So when the Buddha taught the 4 noble truths, he taught 4 aspects for each one of these noble truths, such as impermanence and so forth. And therefore we have this list of 16, and meditating on the emptiness of this becomes the 16 moments, or defines the 16 moments of the path of seeing in the Mahayana. In the Hinayana vehicle, there is not, the presentation is not the same. They engage the aspect of the 16 aspects of the 4 noble truths. Okay, so it is described in a different way. Okay, so nevertheless, on the path of seeing, we say when you obtain the path of seeing, you develop an antidote. But this is an antidote for imputed, intellectually acquired afflictive obscurations, right? So intellectually acquired afflictive obscurations are afflictions that we developed due to let's say, following a particular presentation, a particular view, right? So that's why they're intellectually acquired, and they require specific logic and reasoning, and you accept a specific doctrine, and then you accept those things. However, beyond the intellectually acquired afflictive obscurations, we have what is called the innate afflictions. Innate afflictions are like from our experience, our anger, our attachment, our pride, and so forth, are things that just bubble up. They come up naturally without requiring any specific reasoning or thought. They just come up. So these are the innate ones. So in order to abandon now the innate afflictive obscurations and their seeds, we need to engage the path of meditation. The path of meditation comes in 9 stages, and in each one of those 9 stages develops its own antidote that become the antidote to its own measure of abandonment. Okay, it might sound complicated, but actually it is very good to listen to this presentation of the 5 paths, and the more you hear it, the better it is, because we place imprints in our minds. It doesn't matter what text or what training you choose to follow, it is indispensable to understand the 5 paths. You will have to engage and develop the 5 paths. So the more you hear about it, the more you gain a general idea, and you say, oh, okay, yeah, so this is what will happen, this path, and then this path, and so forth. So bear with us. Okay, so we have talked about afflictive obscurations, but also we need to talk about knowledge obscuration. Knowledge obscuration are defined in a different way between the middle way autonomy school and the middle way consequent school. The middle way autonomy school defines knowledge obscurations as a type of awareness. So as long as you have true grasping in relation to the aggregates, so you have self-grasping, true grasping, thinking that the object 100% exists from its own side, You have this true grasping. And that is defined as the knowledge obscuration in the middle way autonomy school. However, in the middle way consequence school, knowledge obscuration is not posited as awareness. Knowledge obscuration is posited as imprint. So according to the system and the presentation of Master Nagarjuna, middle way consequence school, we have imprints that are knowledge obscurations, and these are the things that we need to abandon. So at the end of the path of meditation, we will enter the uninterrupted path of meditation, and the next moment when we arise from that, we will obtain the state of omniscience. We will attain the 4 types of body, and we will be fully adorned with the marks and signs, and we'll be able to work for the benefit of sentient beings spontaneously. Now, right now, we do not work spontaneously for the sake of sentient beings. We have to calculate, I can do that much, and if I do that much, what will they do for us? We have to set the motivation and so forth. But when you reach the state of omniscience, then automatically, effortlessly, and spontaneously, you continuously work for the benefit of others. So the Buddha, having a mass accumulation over 3 countless great eons, reached the state of omniscience. And then from that point onwards, he engaged in those extensive teachings, the 84,000 bundles of teachings. With his omniscience, he could see exactly what were the specific needs of individuals. So for those who needed to hear about impermanence, he taught impermanence. For those who needed to hear about the self, he taught the self. For those who needed to hear about selflessness, he taught selflessness, and so forth. Okay, so as we say, it took the Buddha 3 countless great eons. Here we are looking at practitioners of the 24th century. In some ways, those are special practitioners, right? They have developed intelligence. They have better intelligence than before. They have little tolerance for suffering, and they wish to follow a path that will bring quick results, right? An easy path as well. However, in terms of merit, it seems that the Dharma practitioners of the 24th century have less merit, and we see that it's not like it was before. We have so much technological advance and so forth, and we have so many external objects that the mind constantly becomes distracted to those external objects. So all that happens to us is just like as we are walking down the street, we're constantly thinking, I want this, I want that, I want the other. So it makes it very difficult for us to meditate, to keep the mind focused in meditation. So we mentioned here, continue to train in the 6 perfections, such as patience, generosity, patience, ethics, enthusiastic effort, and so forth. Of course, at our current state, we are not able to practice them in a perfect way or in an extensive manner, but we have some capacity to practice those things even at present. Right. So we should do however much we can. So, for example, when we talk about ethics, at least we know we can keep the ethics of the 10 non-virtuous actions. And there are ways that we can think to avoid engaging negativity, because you think, oh, if I act in this way, it harms me, it harms others. Definitely it harms me because it makes me accumulate negative karma. So I don't want this. So whichever way you think, you can actually engage the practice at an initial level. The presentation of the 6 perfections begins with the practice of generosity. So it is important to understand here how much we are capable to actually give. Perhaps in Singapore, it's not so easy to practice generosity towards beggars. You don't have beggars in the streets. In India, there are many people who are begging in the streets, and there are plenty of opportunities to practice generosity. But the important thing in generosity is to give without attachment. This is the actual definition of generosity. So with this attitude, without any attachment, if you just give just $1, that becomes an act of generosity. On the other hand, you could give away a very big sum of money, tens of thousands of dollars, but if you still have attachment, then that doesn't become the act of generosity. Of course, when we give away, we have to consider our other financial responsibilities. So, for example, you have a household, you have the children, you have to pay for their school, their education, and so forth. So all these factors limit how much you can give away. But so the most important thing is to be free of attachment, to minimize the attachment. There was a story of this lady who was a Dharma practitioner. She would go to the temple, she would go and listen to the teachings and so forth. So you could say she was a Dharma practitioner. However, she had great difficulty practicing generosity. And she went to the Lama and she talked about it. And the Lama said, okay, we need to do a bit of training. So her training was to take an object into one hand and say, now I give it to whatever was her name, right? I give it to you. So she was passing the object from one hand to the other. So she was training herself to say, I give it to you, taking it, giving. So eventually the Lama said that the lady became very good and practiced generosity, was able to practice generosity at a very big scale. So the first one, generosity. The second one is patience. Patience is paramount. It's paramount, especially in society. If we do not exercise tolerance and patience, the result will be that we have a lot of trouble in society. Of course, patience is very important within the family as well, and in particular towards one parent, so one's spouse, and so partner, spouse, and so forth. So when we come together as a family, it is previous karma that throws us together as a family group. And it is quite often the case that, let's say, if you have a family with 4 members, 3 of them are, getting along very well. And then you have one person that is a troublemaker. That's a very common situation. So it is very important to practice patience, because if you don't practice patience, it means you will retaliate and you will aggravate the situation, isn't it? So Geshe was saying this story about a couple who did not practice patience with each other at all. And it started as a small thing. So the husband would put the cup here. And the wife would say, no, don't put it there. This is not where you put your cup. And the husband would say, no, you're not going to tell me where I put my cup. I put my cup here. And she was saying, no, you don't put the cup there. You put it here. So it started like this as an argument of how and where you place your cup. And it escalated into a big trouble in the family. So Geshe was saying, why? I don't see why. They could not be a bit patient with each other. So if your husband wants to put the cup here, let him put the cup here. When he leaves the house, you can just move the cup and put it where you think it's right. Okay, there's no need to have a conflict about it. Okay, so in order to practice patience, we need a difficult, irritating person. We need someone to do something bad or to say something bad, so that then we have the opportunity to say, it doesn't matter, thank you, all is good, and practice patience. So this is what the bodhisattvas do. They always practice patience. They bring adverse conditions into the path. Okay, so let's look into our text now, the essence of refined gold. We have said that one of the features of all the Lam Rim texts is that they possess the 3 features and the 4 types of greatness. So first of all, when we talk about the 3 types of features, the first feature is that they have an authentic origin. The second one is that these teachings have been checked and clarified and settled. And the third one is that yogis who have taken that, have relied upon these instructions, have developed realizations. So let's look at the text. It says, this graduated dharma of taintless origin is like the wish-fulfilling gem, for through it, infinite beings can easily and quickly accomplish their purposes. So it talks here about the taintless origin, the perfect origin. So first of all, it must be teaching that has originated from Buddha Shakyamuni. But after the teachings were given by Buddha Shakyamuni, those teachings were later on examined by Nagarjuna and Asanga. And Nagarjuna and Asanga were the ones who clarified, saying this is definitive teaching or this is interpretative teachings. They used this method of using valid cognition, valid reasoning, in order to make sure that there was no faults, no corruption in the teachings, and so forth. So having relied upon them, many beings reached the state of an arhat, or they became Buddhas. We have not met these beings, but we're talking about tens of thousands of beings who relied upon those teachings and they reached this result. So to give you an example, in the present day, someone who studies science, whatever is their discipline, they rely on whatever has been found already by previous scientists, right? So they read those texts, and by absorbing this knowledge of previous scientists, they themselves become a scientist of the present era, isn't it? So they rely upon authentic texts that come from a clear lineage of other scientists, and they become a scientist themselves. Okay, so these are the three features, and then we have the four greatness. The first greatness is that the Lam Rim actually combines all these essential points of all the scriptures of the Buddha. It combines all the points of Sutra and Tantra. So we see that in the presentation of the Lam Rim, initially we have this presentation of the training that is common with the Sutra. So we have all the presentation of the six perfections up to the point where we reach the calm abiding and special insight. But then after that, there is a presentation of Tantra. So there is presentation of the four classes of Tantra: action, Tantra, performance Tantra, Yoga Tantra, highest Yoga Tantra. And by relying on highest Yoga Tantra, we reach the state of Vajradhara. So reaching just the end of the sutric vehicle is not enough. We need to engage Tantra to reach that state of Vajradhara. So it says here, combining rivers of the excellent teachings of both the Theravada vehicle and the Mahayana vehicle scriptures, it is like a mighty oceans, revealing the principal points of both the Sutrayana and Vajrayana. It is a complete tradition with complete teachings. The next greatness is that it presents in a very clear way the different trainings and techniques for training the mind. Right? So just as when we go to school and we have a very clear curriculum, this is what you learn in year 1, then this is what you learn in year 2, this is what you learn in year 3. So similarly here in the Lam Rim, we have a very clear and very orderly presentation of all the subjects. If you look at other texts, although they contain this material, it's not easy to identify where is the information about relying on the teacher, where is the information about refuge, and so forth. So it says here, outlining the techniques for taming the mind, it is easily integrated into any practice. And being a teaching, combining the lineages of Guru Vidya Kokila, a sage of the Nagarjuna school, and Lama Serlimpa, a sage of the Asanga school, it is a precious ornament. So the thing that it says here is that it is a combination of two different lineages. We have the lineage of the profound view that comes from the Nagarjuna school, beginning with Master Nagarjuna and Master Vidyakokila, but also we have the lineage of the extensive contact that comes from Master Asanga down to Lama Serlimpa. Lama Serlimpa was the main teacher of Bodhicitta, of Master Atisha. He gave him the Bodhisattva vows. So we have mention of this. So by combining those lineages, it says this is a precious ornament. And at the end, the paragraph concludes by saying, therefore, to hear, contemplate, or meditate upon a Lamrim discourse is fortunate indeed. So the actual Tibetan words say, therefore, I am fortunate to be able to hear, contemplate, and meditate. So this is a personal comment by the author of the text, but we should see it as something that applies to ourselves. We are fortunate to be able to engage such a text. So in our last class, we mentioned what it means to, because it says to listen, to contemplate, to meditate. So what it means to listen It doesn't just refer to hearing the sound of the words. Of course, you will listen to the presentation, but you actually have to think about it. Like, okay, so here the Lam Rim is a graduated presentation. How do I go from the very beginning, the way to rely on the teacher? How do I get to the state of omniscience? What are the different trainings of the three scopes? What are those practices of the six perfections? What am I supposed? What is the training here, here, here? So you have to think about those things, right? So it's not just listening to the sound. So first you hear, then you reflect, and finally, of course, you have to meditate. We will explain the subject of meditation, but there are, roughly speaking, there are two types of meditation. There is analytical meditation and there is placement meditation. In analytical meditation, whatever is your object that you engage, you analyze it. You think about it from many different angles. When you do placement meditation, the mind remains single-pointedly or without being distracted. So we're talking here about developing calm abiding on whatever is your chosen object. So you meditate on impermanence, you have to say single-pointedly. You meditate on selflessness, you have to remain single-pointedly. Whatever you do it single-pointedly. So that's the placement meditation. Okay. So it is indeed, I'm very fortunate to be able to listen, reflect, and meditate on such a text. Continuing that, we have a quotation from Je Rinpoche's Songs of the Spiritual Path, which is the Song of Experience. The verse that says, it's actually verse 6 and the beginning of verse 7. So anyway, the translation is slightly different, but this is what it is. From Nagarjuna and Asanga, banners unto all humankind, ornaments amongst the world's sages, comes the sublime Lam Rim lineage, fulfilling all hopes of practitioners. It is a wish-fulfilling gem, combining the streams of 1,000 teachings. It is a notion of excellent guidance. Okay, so we had that quotation, and following that, it begins talking about the four greatness of the Lam Rim. So it says the Lam Rim teaching has four especially great qualities. So it begins with the first one. It reveals how all the various doctrines of Buddha are non-contradictory. If you rely upon the Lam Rim teaching, all the words of Buddha will be effectively comprehensible. You will see that there are root practices and branch practices, and that there are direct and indirect teachings, all of which aim at creating helpful circumstances along the stages of spiritual development for a practitioner like yourself. So as we say, the Lam Rim that has these three features, in addition, has the four greatnesses. The first greatness is that by relying on the Lam Rim, you will come to understand that all the teachings of the Buddha are non-contradictory. There is no contradiction there. So when we talk about the teachings, we talk about the meaning of the teachings and we talk about the words of the teachings. Another way of referring to this is talking about the transmitted teachings and the realized teachings. So the transmitted teachings are all the teachings that are given, the words of the teachings, if you want. And the realized teachings is all the realizations that someone generates within the mind stream, having taken this into practice. So, for example, the three higher trainings, or bodhicitta, or the qualities of the grounds and paths, all of those things will become the realized teachings. So what you will understand here by relying on the Lam Rim is that although the Buddha gave so many teachings, actually for one person, if they want to reach all the state to enlightenment, there is no harm and there is no contradiction. Although there might be some difference in words in different teachings, for example, sutra or tantra or vinaya and so forth, yes, we find some differences in words. However, for one individual, in terms of what person needs, all of this is necessary. So there is not one bit that you say, no, this is not useful to me. I exclude it. I leave it out of my training. All of this is needed. It's just that some are more important at times and others appear as secondary. Okay, so as it says here in terms of the first greatness, you can see that some are root practices and some are branch practices. So obviously we say that in order to reach the state of omniscience, to cultivate bodhicitta is a root practice, is a main thing. But beyond that, we need other practices, which are the paths that are shared with the individual of the small scope and the middle scope. These are like branches, preliminary practices. Nevertheless, they are all necessary. We continue with the second greatness. So it says, you will take all the various teachings as personal advice. You will see the profound teachings of the Sutra and Tantra, the treatises and dissertations written by later masters, and all levels and branches of practice as methods to use to overcome negative aspects of the mind. The significance of all the teachings of the Buddha and his successors, from the teachings on how to follow the spiritual guide up to those on how to perceive the most profound aspect of reality, will come into your hand. You will learn how to practice analytical meditation upon the words of the teachings and placement meditation upon the central themes of these words. Thus, you will see all the teachings in perspective of your life and progress. There is the common misconception that, this particular teaching is theory, whilst this other teaching is for practice. For us, actually, this division is wrong, is irrelevant. Whatever is taught so that we can put it into practice. There's no theory and practice. Everything is to put it into practice. And if you rely on the Lam Rim, you will see that everything will appear as your personal advice. Therefore, you will destroy this misconception that there are some teachings out there that are just for me to listen, but not for me to put them into practice. It says that the significance of these teachings from the beginning, from how to rely on the spiritual teacher, all the way up to cultivating calm abiding and special insight, that is the profound aspect of reality, all of this will appear as your personal instruction. And then you will engage meditation on it, both analytical and placement meditation. So everything appears as personal instruction. That's the second greatness. The third one, you will easily find the intent of the Buddha. Of course, the original words of the Buddha and those of the later commentators are perfect teachings, but for a beginner, they are overwhelmingly numerous, and consequently, their meaning is difficult to fathom. Hence, although you may study and contemplate them, you probably will not gain experience of their actual essence. Or even if you should gain it, a tremendous effort and extent of time would be required. However, because the Lam Rim tradition has its source in Atisha's Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment, which incorporates all the various oral teachings of the Supreme Indian Master, even someone like you can easily and quickly arrive at the Buddha's intent through it. So, as I say, there are many teachings, many treatises. They are very extensive. And if we decided to study all of them, it will take an incredible amount of time, an incredible amount of energy and effort. And beyond that, as it says here, we are beginners. And as beginners, you come in completely fresh, complete beginner. So the first thing you need to understand is how to rely on a teacher. You don't even know that. Beginners here who are overwhelmed by all these texts and teachings are people like us who do not have much merit. So if you have less merit, all of this becomes greatly overwhelming. So if you rely on the Lam Rim, you have this great opportunity of accessing the essence of all the teachings. Okay, let's have time for questions. Okay, so we're still discussing the third of the greatnesses here. So say, although you may study and contemplate them, you probably will not gain experience of the actual essence. So as we say, for us beginners, of course, there are so many teachings by the Buddha. There are so many treatises by the great Indian Panditas. But even if we were to rely upon a teacher, we would have to rely for years upon years upon years. There will be great difficulty in studying all those texts and even more contemplating the meaning of, understanding the meaning of these texts. So it says, instead of making this great effort and spending that much time, it is very fortunate that we can rely on these Lam Rim teachings. These Lam Rim teachings come from Atisha's Lamp to the Path of Enlightenment. And when you engage the Lam Rim, the study of the Lam Rim, This naturally introduces you to the main points of all the sutras and even the tantras. So because it contains the lineage, the instruction of all the great texts, it prepares you, and eventually you will develop understanding. It prepares you to later on engage all those things as to study them and to practice them. So it says you, even someone like us, will be able to easily and quickly arrive at the Buddha's intent. So very important to understand what is the Buddha's intent. You can say that the Buddha's intent is to teach the paths of the three scopes, or you could say it is to teach the three principal aspects of the path. Important thing through the study of the Lam Rim is that you come to understand that all of this, the Buddha taught all of this for me, for my sake. The ultimate intention of the Buddha is to lead others to enlightenment. The Buddha exclusively teaches in order to benefit others, does not teach in order to harm others. So you will come to understand what is the intention of the Buddha. Continuing with the fourth greatness, the great negativity of abandoning a lineage of Dharma will spontaneously be arrested. When you realize the intent of the Buddha, you will see all his direct and indirect teachings as wise and skillful means for satisfying the diverse spiritual needs of the variety of beings. To say that some lineages of Dharma are perfect methods and should be practiced, where other lineages are imperfect and should be ignored, is the karma called abandoning Dharma, a great negativity indeed. However, if you study the Lam Rim, you will see how all the doctrines of the Buddha and lineages come from him, and lineages coming from him are non-contradictory. Then the great negativity of abandoning an aspect of Dharma will never occur. So it is possible that we engage in criticism and we say, oh no, the Buddha taught many things, and what he taught in this particular occasion is not for me. It's not beneficial for me. It's not for me to practice. Actually, it would harm my development. It would not lead me quick to enlightenment. Therefore, I'm going to exclude this. So let's say you say, sutra is not for me. Or other people think that about Tantra. They say, this is not for me. This will hinder my enlightenment. The Buddha taught it, but it's not for me. It was for that particular audience, and so forth. Whatever the Buddha has taught, all the practices of the individuals of the three scopes, they are all things for us to take into practice. If we don't, and we start criticizing and excluding some things, then we engage in the heavy negativity of abandoning Dharma. Also, abandoning Dharma can occur if we criticize the religious systems of others. It is totally against what Buddha Shakyamuni taught. When you look at other people, you have to recognize their basic principle. They are humans, just like myself, and what they wish is to experience happiness, and they do not wish to experience any suffering. So beyond this commonality, let them follow whatever religious system suits them best. It's not for me to criticize their religious system and say this is good, this is bad, and so forth, right? So it says here, abandoning Dharma is a great negativity indeed. So it's not something light, it's something which is quite serious, quite heavy. However, if you practice the Lam Rim, you will see that all the teachings of the Buddha are coming together. They're not contradictory. There's nothing to be abandoned. There's nothing to be criticized. So the great negativity of abandoning an aspect of Dharma will never occur. These are the four great qualities of the Lam Rim tradition. Who with any common sense would not benefit from hearing a discourse on it? A thing the fortunate of India and Tibet have long relied upon, a generously high teaching to delight the heart, the tradition known as the stages of the path from the beings of the three capacities. Okay, so it says who with common sense, meaning intelligent people like ourselves, right, will come to see that there is great benefit here, and that this is indeed the practice of the great beings in India, of the great beings in Tibet. They all practice the same things. The three scopes, this is the practice, isn't it? So they relied upon it, and we can see that this is the great teaching that reveals the stages of the path for the beings to the three capacities. So regarding the 4 effects arising from hearing, contemplating, and meditating upon the Lam Rim course, so we've talked about the 3 features and the 4 greatness of the Lam Rim, and we talked that we need to listen, reflect, and meditate. So what has Lama Tsongkhapa said? Okay, so again, the quotation is from the Lines of Experience. It says, through it, one perceives all doctrines as non-contradictory. All teachings arise as personal advice. The intent of the Buddha is easily found, and you are protected from the cliff of the greatest non-virtue. So this is the verse talking about the 4 greatness of the Lam Rim. The last line of this verse is how you're protected from the great abyss of abandoning the Dharma. Therefore, the wise and fortunate in India and Tibet have thoroughly relied upon this excellent legacy, known as the stages in the practices of beings of 3 capacities, so the path of the individual of the 3 scopes. Who of powerful mind would not be intrigued by it? So very important here to make sure that every day we dedicate some time for practice, and we divide our day in various sessions and engage in various subjects. Now, we have access to the internet, and there are constant teachings available in the internet. So we can hear a lot of teachings, a lot of information, and then put it into practice during the course of the day on renunciation, on bodhicitta, on correct view, the wisdom realizing emptiness. All of this is accessible to us, right? So also it's very important to perform this revision meditation of all the subjects of the Lam Rim, starting from the proper way to rely on the teacher up to reaching the state of Buddhahood. This type of revising meditation of all the subjects is very beneficial for the mind. It trains the mind so that you don't become distracted. You stay because you're thinking one subject after the other. But also it helps the mind go towards the Dharma. So it's very important to go through all the subjects of the Lam Rim to have an overview of the 5 paths, the 10 grounds, and what is involved with reaching the state of enlightenment. So very important to do this practice every day. Now, since we're talking about the practice of Dharma, of course, we know that there are many obstacles. Even if you have the intention to do meditation, to do some practice, you will find that this or that thing gets in the way. When actually we engage some small activity, non-dharma, mundane, small activity, we find that it comes very easily. We don't have obstacles. So the reason for that is because the more the merry, the bigger the dharma, the bigger the maras who interfere and create obstacles. So be aware of it, that the more serious you are with your practice, the more you want to practice, the more obstacles will come up. So it is very important to keep reminding ourselves that we have obtained the precious human rebirth. We have an excellent opportunity. We have met the Mahayana teachings. Here we are in this life. We have privilege. We have good health. We have intelligence. And if we don't practice now, when are we going to practice? When we are old, when we are sick, if we are not in this type of existence or rebirth, it will be much more difficult. So please keep it in your mind. It's very important to practice every day.